Right here I've got Manny Mathews, or Frederick Mathews. Most people know him as Manny. He was born and raised on the island, been here for many years, has taught school here, is one of the Mathews. Taught this lady right here, as a matter of fact, which is
His cousin.
his cousin. I have Tootie Barnes, which is actually Littleton. She's one of the Littletons, which is an old island name. We have Sylvia. Sylvia is a combination between the Oulsey family and the Mathews family. So she was a experiment in progress. We're glad to have her here. She's very good. You're going to like her. Marion Persing has been coming down here for years from Fort Worth. So she's a frequent visitor. She now lives here. Taddy Callister has been here for many years. Her mother Edith in blue has been coming down here for before World War II. Maybe we can get a story or so out of her. Lloyd Dreyer has been here. The Dreyer family has been here since the early 1900s. There's been many, many Dryers. I think there was 15 in one family, but the Dryers have all been involved in boats and fishing all their lives, so we think it's some good fishing stories from Lloyd. And then we have Lonnie Gaston from Midland, who has visited Port A since 1959, and they have some stories as well. Now what we're going to do, we may have another one or two coming up. I think maybe we're going to try to get Roxy Curry to speak. Yes, we are.
Roxy, just make it up.
Roxy, you can just make it up and it sounds just like it really happened in Puerto Rico. But it probably did. I'm going to start. I just want a quick story from each individual and pass the mic down, and then we'll bring it back again and see what we get. All right, this is Manny.
Thanks, Mark. Well, you guys have learned none of my stories are sharp, but I'll give you a little story or two. Some of these gals have been in my life since I can remember. This gal is not only an ex-student, but she also is a godchild. And this is one of my cousins here. And so we're going to check and see if we tell the stories on each other that are true or not. Anyway, I guess the only thing for me to tell is that I'm one of the remaining persons that was actually born here now. I was born one block over that way at the corner of Oulsey and Oulsey, and grew up, rather I was born there and lived there until I was about 3 years old, and moved out to Avenue G, where I lived until I got married. And of course, I was looking at Mr. Dreyer over here. I didn't recognize you, Lloyd, but glad to see you. And anyway, I'm going to pass this on down, and I'll be thinking of some yarns to spend here in a little bit. This is Tootie Barnes.
My maiden name was Littleton, Tootie Littleton Barnes, and I was one of 4 of Eddie Mae and J.D. Littleton. My dad moved to the island. Hey Lloyd, how are you? Haven't seen you in forever. Good to see you. My daughter took care of you, and I see you when you had a bypass. She called and she said, Mother, do you know somebody named Lloyd Dreyer from Port Aransas? I said, yes. She said, well, I've got him and I see you. I said, well, take good care of him. But my family moved, my dad moved here in 35 after his dad was killed in an oil field explosion in Kilgore. And he had a brother, Melvin Littleton, that the ferry landing's named after, and Leola Shanklin. And all 3 of the kids each had 4 kids, so there were 12 of us running around. And my mom moved here, my dad met her when he was in the Coast Guard, and she moved here in 1942, and she thought she had moved to the end of the world. She said there was just nothing here. It was just so desolate. But I have so many fond memories. the shrimp boils that we used to have on Mathews' porch. We used to have where Cetus is, used to be the old Island Food Cafe, Island Food Store, and Island Food Cafe next to Bill Moore's, and they would close the street off, and we would have dances. Uncle Bubba Molina would play the harmonica. My Uncle Jack Shanklin, he played the accordion. Jack Campbell from Seadrift, he would come down, and we just had, I have so many fond memories. I'm going to pass it on down to Sylvia, and I'll think of some more.
Okay, I am Sylvia Oulsey, descendant of Woody Oulsey and Florrie Mathews Oulsey. We were a very blended family, right, Teddy? As my mother used to say, her kids and his kids, pardon my language, were beating the hell out of their kids. Wasn't really true, but we had a great time. I was the baby of the family for 10 years, and I'm told that when my little brother was born, when I was 10, that I didn't like him very much and I didn't want her to bring him home from the hospital, but I don't have any memory of that. My grandfather, Sam Mathews, had Mathews that was on the waterfront, and then some years later, in 1958, when I was in first grade, Daddy built Woody's Boat Basin right around the corner and on the bulkhead where Trout Street is now, and had that, owned and operated that until 1972, at which time he leased it for 10 years and then sold it in 1982. And they moved to the Hill Country. Like Tootie, I have so many fond memories, and when you hear someone else talk about it, this very building that many of our fathers, relatives, and grandfathers and grandmothers helped build so many years ago, the big New Year's Eve dances every year. And one funny story that I have been told, but I don't remember because my sister was 2.5 years older than me. And one year, I guess it was an annual tradition that was really the only night my mother got to go out every year is New Year's Eve. And so she made a gorgeous, my mother was known for her sewing, and she made a beautiful, of sorts, roaring 20 type, real lacy black dress. And my sister knew that she was going to be going out that night. So she hid Mama's high heels, and she took a razor blade and shredded the dress because she didn't want her going out that night. So, knowing my mother, she probably didn't go out that night, but great memories in this building of those New Year's Eve dances, because back then it was family affairs as we got a little bit older. And then this is also where we had the Santa Claus Christmas every year. Santa would come in, and it wasn't Andy Dallas, as I recall, for a long, long time. Oh, yeah, Annie Mae, who lived just right across the corner here. And we would all come up here, and Santa would come in, and they would hand out bags of nuts and fruit and little bitty gifts, but just great memories of those years. I'll hand it over to Marion.
I was thinking about what all my family did. My grandparents, my aunts and uncles, my mother and daddy, and all the cousins and all of us kids, and I know it was the 5. We would always come down to Point Aransas for summer, for several weeks in the summer. And so I've seen it go from oyster shell streets to this. I've seen it go from no stoplights to that. And it's interesting, but that's what I remember. We stayed at the Spanish Village. Y'all heard of that. It's been here longer than the rest of us. And everybody, all of us had a different little cottage. Then we stayed at Sunrise Courts when it was built. And one summer we brought down, each one of 5 of us brought down a friend, and that's 10 kids. We must have walked, I can't imagine getting 10 people, 12 people into a station wagon. I don't know how we got here, but we got here. And so Daddy went to go pay, and he said, hey, I'm ready to pay, we gotta go back home. Oh, Mr. Wiley, please don't come here anymore. Why not? Well, you got mostly girls. Yeah, I know, we got mostly girls. Well, they like to swim in the morning and wash their hair in the morning, and they swim at night or at afternoon and wash their hair and say, my septic tanks are floating away, please don't come back here anymore. So we did. When the Daddy found some land, built a house, and we're right across from the pilot boat, and right next to the science museum place. But that's the only reason we moved, because don't come here anymore. I've got lots of good stories, but it's your turn.
I'm Patty McAllister from San Antonio. I was born on August 2nd, 1945. In those days, women laid in for 2 weeks in the hospital after they had a baby. So mother was lying there when the bomb fell on Hiroshima, and she was lying there when Japan surrendered. And the following month, my father was mustered out of the Army Air Corps and came home to see his new baby girl and his 3-year-old son, Bo. And shortly thereafter, they, mother and father, took Bo and me to Port Aransas. So my little diapered bottom hit the Gulf of Mexico when I was about 2 months old. My grandfather McAllister, many years later became the mayor of San Antonio, had bought this piece of property at what is now 11th and Avenue C, but the streets didn't have names until I was a teenager. And this house was on maybe about an acre of land, and it grew like topsy. It's now a compound with 4 buildings on it. And we grew up there in the summertime. And there wound up being 4 of us siblings when it was all over. And we had the happiest times of our lives at Port Aransas in that house. In this sandy little town that probably had about 300 people in it when I was born. The Oulseys lived across I guess it was across Avenue C from us. And my brother Reagan and I, every summer, had an annual rock fight with Bobby and Cindy Oulsey, which scared the life out of me because I didn't get it. And of course, they weren't rocks, they were oyster shells. The longtime Justice of the Peace, Oscar Gillespie, lived about 3 houses north of us. And he watched us all drive the car as soon as we were old enough to see over the steering wheel at age 9 or 10 or whatever, and just never batted an eye. Just north of him, there was a water tank, which was the water tank for our little neighborhood. And beyond that, there was nothing. There was nothing between there and the jetty. And the reason we knew that was because every summer we'd take a hike from the house to the jetty via the forts. And the reason that mother let us do it was we had an old yellow dog who would chase away the snakes, I guess was the plan. I had this funky little snake bite kit with a little razor and 2 little suction cups that we'd take with us. This old army canteen that belonged to my father. Anyway, I will pass this along, but one thing that we did at night, that mother did at night to keep us occupied when we were little children, was take us down to the ferry landing and ride the ferry back and forth. And Dewey Dryer was the captain, and he would let us up into the wheelhouse and let us steer and everything. He was a real sweetheart. Here we go.
Good evening, folks. I guess y'all know me. I don't know you, but anyway, let's enjoy it. My name is Lloyd Dryer, and it seems like I was built here in time. You know, it dates back to time. And about 9 years ago, I almost died. I had a staph infection, and it settled in my spine. And I want you to know I've lost a lot of our memory of dates, not places particularly, because the places that I used to swim and stuff like that is used up with houses. Down here where that right east where that bit, all of that building and boat docks built there, it was vacant. It was nothing but sand. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, the third 40 built boats were built on that corner, on that very corner. He built them, 3 of them for St. Mathews. And they were made into shrimp boats. And they were launched over on Klein's Point. That's a long time ago. And of course, back then, fishing was not very far offshore. You know, 5 or 6 miles was a long way compared to what we're doing today. Well, that's my comparison. Anyway, the Farley hulls had a 13-gallon gas tank in them, most of them, because that's all they could get in the stern back there, over the steering rods of the rudder. And these boats, they just couldn't go very far offshore. First thing because of the fuel capacity, but they caught a lot of kingfish and done a lot of tarpon up that North Surf and then up against the jetties. Uncle Johnny Mathews, one of his boats that was built, before they built, he got caught under that fishing pier. Out there about 200 or 300 yards on the south side of the jetty. It went to the south and came into the beach. And he was out there and got caught on a sea, and this sea carried him down and took him right under that pier. And he punched a hole in the roof as he went through on the sea, and then he got over on the other side, and he turned around, and he waited till it was right, and then he whizzed back underneath it, coming on back, getting out of there. Anyway, they fixed his boat up, and he went on back to work. But things like that were just things that happened, you know, along with fishing and what have you. I'm not much more on speech. So I'll turn this over to the next one here and let him tell you the whole rest of the stories. And Jimmy Gates over there grinning his head.
I'm Monty Gaston from Midland, Texas. I spent the last 33 years there. I can't remember my first grade teacher's name, but I can sure remember where I vacationed that summer. It was right here in Port Aransas. We came down here as a family every year and stayed at the Seahorse Lodge where Mrs. Cobb owned it. And I think she was chasing around as much as my mother was, chasing us kids, trying to keep us in line. But we came down here so Dad could go tarpon fishing. And that's all he talked about, all he wanted to do. And as kids, we came down here to go swimming in the ocean and have mud fights and look for seashells and anything else we could find. And keep her at time. Mom would take us down to the ocean in the mornings, take us back home in the heat of the day, and then take us back to the oceans in the evening. And we just swam, and we really enjoyed it. And one thing, there's been 3 generations of my family that have come down here to Port Aransas. And one of my fondest memories was when I brought my 2-year-old daughter down there. She was just barely walking. And we went down to the beach and had her out in her bathing suit. And we parked, backed into the ocean on the station wagon, and I said, Sarah, there it is. And I turned around to get a beach towel and something else, and Sarah, my daughter, 2-year-old daughter, she just screamed. And I I turned around and I said, Sarah, what in the world is wrong? And she was crying, and she just jumped up in my arms, and I held her, and she said, Daddy, that water's chasing me. Currently, I live in Aransas Pass. I've been trying to get down here for the last 40 years of my life. I love it down here. I've lived in West Texas all my life. In fact, I had a visitor out there in Midland one time, and he said, is it always this dry down here? And I said, gosh, no. Been that time it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. We got nearly a quarter inch that time. I'm gonna pass it over to Jimmy, and I'll say some of my better stories after he gets through.
Hi there. I am Jimmy Gates, and I was born over at Spawn Hospital. I guess that was probably my first ride in a police car. Was on the way over there because I was part ways out by the time we got to Spawn Hospital, so it wasn't my last time in fact at one. But my memory of Port Aransas as a kid growing up here is not one of Port Aransas being the sleepy fishing village that I keep hearing about. I mean, my family was in the bar business. My daddy moved down here in 1947 after Johnny Clevenhagen, a famous Texas Ranger, y'all might recognize the name, and a fellow by the name of Buster Kern, who was the sheriff in Dickinson County, Harris County, excuse me. They shut down the gambling operations in Galveston, and my father found himself unemployed. And he moved down to Corpus and went to work for a gent by the name of Doc Mason. And Doc had all the operations in Corpus at the time. And, he came to Port Aransas in 1953 and built what I believe to be the first truly air-conditioned nightclub. It's called Rod Gun Club. And I was raised around that sort of thing. My grandmother and grandfather had come down here. My grandma had come off of an Indian reservation in New Mexico outside of Portales. Her name was Shorty. Her real name was Gladys. I'm probably going to pay for that tonight in my dreams. But Shorty and Mac was my grandpa. They had the pool hall down on the flats down there, and my father built the rod and gun right next door to that out of cinder block. But prior to that, he'd been working working at the hangout in the Balinese right across the street. But anyway, he got himself a little stake and he invested it. And the year I was born was the year that he built the rod and gun. And there were times when we were financially flush, and there was times when times were pretty tight all the way through. But I never wanted to be in the bar business. It was kind of strange. I did a lot of business. Don't get me wrong, I did a lot of business in bars. But I was never much good on the receiving of the cash side. I was mostly in the receiving of the product side of the thing. But Lloyd Dreyer is the man that ruined my life. See, he was a sport fishing captain, and I wanted to grow up to do that. That's what I wanted to be. My father thought I was crazy, but he thought I was crazy when I asked him to let me join the Marine Corps. My buddies were all older than me, and they'd all gone off to this funny little country over in Southeast Asia, and they were in the Marines, and I wanted to be a Marine too, but I wasn't old enough, so I went to my father and asked him to sign the papers so I could be a Marine. And he expressed his opinion about that was that he would rather shoot me himself rather than let some Chinaman shoot me. His opinion of Lyndon Johnson's operation was not the highest. But he was a man that had a lot to do in Port Aransas, and he did a number of things here in Port Aransas that he's never really been credited for, and most people have never even heard of W.D. Gates that live here now, because he was an old school outlaw. He was an old style guy. He was probably one of the last of that breed. But he was a gambler and a nightclub operator and all that sort of stuff. And, he had his opinions about things, like if there's a hill below, we're all going to go, and you can never judge the depth of a well by the length of the handle on the pump. And he just had the attitude that things would work out the way they were supposed to. And I've outlived him now. He died at the age of 56. And I had, like I say, my upbringing was in the flats down there around the pool hall and all that stuff. But the old boys, I would get out of school and go down to rack balls with my grandmother, and the old boys that would be shooting pool in there a lot of times were the fishing guides. And I got to know them, and I kind of admired their whole operation. I thought that was great. You get up in the morning, go to work, get in there, and by 2 o'clock you're in the beer joint shooting pool and having a cold beer. I thought, this is the way to do this. And anyway, like I say, Lloyd volunteered to take me under his wing, and we went off traveling down into the Caribbean. I was his deckhand, and that's the way I started my career here in Port Aransas, sport fishing. I still do that. I still work for a man now, work for a private operation. I did charter fishing for a long time. But the important thing that I've got to impart is that, Port Aransas is this whole concept of it always being a quiet, sleepy little fishing village it's only one side of the story. It's kind of like when you read Eldon May Roberts' book. That's as Elda saw it.
Amen.
Go Jimmy.
I'm going to pass this off before I get in too much trouble.
Yeah, my name is Bill Smith. Born and grew up just right next to the Church of Christ right there. And in 1939, and I can't think of any one story. It was a great place to grow up at, in the 50s especially, 40s and 50s. We're having our high school reunion right next door here. Graduated high school, man, just passed 1958. And we're having the 55th reunion right next door here, and I really can't, but I will tell you one story. About going to school. We had to ride, in those days, the 8th grade was as high as you could go here in Port Aransas, and you had to go to high school over in Ranges Pass. And we caught the bus there at Sam Allen's every day, which is, what is a t-shirt shop now? I don't know what it is. Okay, it's an ice cream joint, you're right. Yeah, that used to be the grocery store in town. The only grocery, olive food store, had another one. And anyway, we caught the bus there, had to ride, and that's when we had the one-way causeway and all that going to Ranges Pass. And anyway, we're all on the bus, and I don't know, this is a little bit off color, but W.J. Hutchins had a brand new condom, and he put mayonnaise on it, and he just threw it like that. Well, it landed on Ann Studeman's. She was sitting in her chair, and it landed on her notebooks and stuff that were sitting on her lap, and she she just got all freaked her out. So we get to school over there, and we go to school and everything.